team, this is the Innovation Inc. podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Brown Evans. We sit down with our favorite entrepreneurs and nerd out on anything that involves innovation in the corporate space. So if you work for a corporate company, but you think like an entrepreneur, we're your people, and we're really excited you're here. Before we jump in, a huge thank you to our sponsor and Inc. 5000 company, Apex Software. They create powerful custom software, websites, and mobile apps that take your business's innovative ideas and turn them into realities. Reach out today to get a quote at apexsoftware.com. All right, everyone, let's get to it. I'm very excited today. We have a guest who drove an hour, 2 hours. We'll give you an hour and a half. We'll say that you took that much time. We have Jim Tavernelli from KLH Engineers. He's based in Northern Kentucky. Jim, a couple fun facts about Jim. He's been with KLH for over 20 years. You celebrated your 20th, it sounds like. Started as a wee electrical engineer back in the day and is now president and COO. He's a huge Dayton Flyers fan. I'm looking at his coffee mug right now. And finally, my favorite thing of all the things you could display on LinkedIn that you chose to keep on there is that you are the president of the Anderson Little League. Is that still true?
That is true. Okay. Yes.
So, Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit more about KLH? Obviously, your name gives away a few things. You guys are engineers, but tell us about you guys, and then we'll hop into innovation.
So, quick fun fact about 20 years, eclipsing 20 years at the business. So, I did go to the University of Dayton. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I met my now wife there while I was a senior. So she was a sophomore. And when I graduated, in order to keep the relationship going, because it was worth continuing, I moved an hour south opposed to 4.5 hours northeast. And I started looking for, an opportunity to find a job, right? And this precedes, Career Builder, Indeed, LinkedIn. So it was, a lot of dial-up internet stuff. And I ended up finding KLH. And it's the one and only job I've had since college, which is rare. But I'm proud of it. And when I tell people that I've been there that long, their first question is, well, why? Why have you stayed there that long? And my answer is very simple. It's the leadership philosophies, the selflessness, and the opportunity that exist amongst the leadership. And I'm a good example of just that, an opportunity to build something significant at the business. And they supported me through it all with mentorship, with resources, you name it. They stood by their word. And as it became more substantial, just the natural exposure to leadership growth that just naturally happens when you're in charge of something and the unpredictable things that you encounter, leading teams, things like that. It's been a wonderful, wonderful ride. And when, our then president and CEO, Joe Kors, was thinking about stepping down, he identified me as a potential successor. Now, at the time, I can't believe that was even the case because well, actually, I would tell you at the time, I thought I could rule the world. So that's a lie. I was a little arrogant. I didn't know what I didn't know, but brought me into those discussions, those meetings, and started mentoring me even that much more. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about KLH's story. I think it's very unique as it relates to just the changing environment within the construction industry. That said, KLH Engineers is an engineering consultant, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering consultant in the architectural engineering and construction industry. For short, that's AEC. We provide traditional engineering services. I mentioned ME&P. We also do fire protection, fire alarm, communication technology, systems lighting design, all the traditional, and progressive engineering services that you'd find with, frankly, any of our competitors. That's not what separates KLH from an otherwise crowded space. But this is how I characterize it. Architects design buildings. We bring those buildings to life. I don't think I just violated any GE taglines right there. But so that's the way I would describe what KLH does. We also serve all the major markets: industrial, retail, commercial, education, entertainment, healthcare is a big one. So pretty much the gamut. We do it all.
I'm particularly excited for people to hear the story of KLH, especially it sounds like over the last really 2, 3, 5 years. There are a few things in our prep call that I've not been able to stop thinking about. So I'm excited for our audience to hear it. So this is going to be much more of a story than I think a lot of our other interviews, because you guys just have such an incredible one over the last few years, especially as you've been really coming into leadership. So take us back a few years ago. The question I gave you is, what does innovation mean to KLH? And you just blew me away. So walk our audience through that.
Okay. It's a story that's loaded with emotional details. It's been awesome. But the way it all started was about 6 years ago. We had some serious issues, and I was a shareholder then, a minority shareholder at that, but still, looked upon as a leader in the business, and I just wasn't acting like one. And this is right around when I became COO. And we just had quality issues. We had consistency issues. We had like culture issues. We had turnover, out the ass, if that's allowed to be said. And the thing was, most of us were just ignoring it, and we weren't doing anything. And moreover, I said quality, right? That the product of our services are construction documents. These are drawings. In lay terms, they're blueprints. And that's what contractors use to build buildings. Right? They are the builders, the installers of what architects and engineers design. And our drawings were they were garbage. And we were ignoring a lot of the signs that were telling us that we were on the path to obsolescence. And thankfully, I mentioned Joe, he organized an offsite retreat about 6 years ago. It was August of 2016, to challenge the technical leaders of the company then around how do we fix this thing. But the first thing was waking us up to the fact that there was a problem, and pointed out that we weren't innovating, we weren't acting like owners of the business, we weren't making hard decisions about strategic direction of the company, decisions about what kind of work we want to do, how we're going to do it. That said, he's a second generation owner. He's about to divest. We're quote unquote the third generation of ownership. And he hit us right between the eyes with something that I'll never forget, knowing that 1/3 of all companies going through a third generational change. Now, KLH is not a family owned business. This is true of family owned businesses as well as non-family owned businesses. 1/3 of those companies survive. Said differently, 2/3 of those do not, right? They become irrelevant. They go out of business. And he asked us, are you the generation that kills the business? And that put us on our heels.
Wow.
And it started to, it forced us to think differently. Now, emotionally, that is what set the stage on how to change. On the fact that something needed to change. And the rest of the conversation was easy. Now, there was some arguments and there was some fighting, but it was all very therapeutic and healthy in terms to arrive at what became the charter of what we affectionately call our technical strategy, right? We are a technical company, and engineers aren't that creative, but we called it the technical strategy. It's functional, right? It works. And it landed on three things. We needed to abandon 2D software, drawing softwares, two-dimensional, right, unintelligent, and migrate the entire business entirely into three-dimension, what is called building information modeling. These are smart models. This is the whole digital twin concept that you may be hearing about in construction. It is the digital representation, the replica of what physically gets built. Rather than, traditionally the blueprints, right? You see a facilities guy blow off the dust of a set of blueprints to figure out what's happening in a building or whatever. It's now all computer based. So entirely migrating into three-dimensional space. The second was leveraging data in a more meaningful way. And you can do that in a BIM model. So building a database that allows us to leverage calculations, owner criteria, historical performance data in a meaningful way that allowed us to not recreate the wheel. Because the trend that's happening in construction, excuse me, is the ongoing commoditization of design. All right. I said that we create the drawings. There is less and less value being placed on the drawing creation because of the technology that is available to owners in that regard. So the trend in construction, as I said, is the ongoing commoditization of design. All right, too often, so there's fee compression, there's schedule compression, and all these things apply force on design companies to jump right into a project and start what is called drafting. So less emphasis on the consulting side of the business. From an engineering perspective, it is the consulting on big dollar decisions like chiller plants, boilers, switchgear, the electrical distribution. And instead, we get right into the drafting exercises of laying out lighting fixtures in a classroom or a patient room, whatever the case might be. And those are not the things that add value.
And those are the things that can be automated.
To the owner. Yes, those are the things that can be automated. And yet we found ourselves in this space of, that's really all the value that we provided. And so that was one of the challenges from that offsite. So harnessing data in a way that automates those types of decisions to provide more capacity for our engineers to be more consultative. And the third piece is to leverage software in a more meaningful way. And that included building a software team at KLH. And I got to tell you, that is incredibly unique for a company like us, for a company in construction, period, that worked directly in the API of the software that we use to execute our work, to find opportunities to create process efficiency for our design process. And there's a wonderful thing that happens when you put a software engineer next to an electrical engineer, for example. That's taking the known pains from the trench, the bottlenecks that exist in the process, because a software engineer doesn't need to know how to design buildings. Coders code, as they say. As long as they understand the problem statement and what you're trying to accomplish, they can take that ball and they can run with it. And so that is the trend that we started to see. And that was the third charter. So the easy part here is to agree on what needs to happen. So at that offsite, we all put our hands in the center and said, we felt good about it, right?
Kumbaya. Everyone, yeah.
The hard part is then going back to the office and okay, now what are we going to do about this? How are we going to get this thing off the ground organizationally with the employees? How are we going to build buy-in and that type of thing? And in the early days, we introduced the whole Kanban concept, which is a popular agile method within, I think it started in automotive and even in software, but we adopted it. We put our own spin on it. But in the early days, it was 5 of us standing around this Kanban with the swim lanes, and it was awkward, right? It was very awkward. It was almost like we were just staring at each other during these huddles. Like, now what am I supposed to say? And one of the things that I learned, in my position is just to fight through the awkwardness or the silliness or the constant introspection that I would experience typically in the shower, by the way, Liz, was, I'd take hour-long showers because I would get lost in my own head around is this the right thing I need to be doing? Is this the right thing should I said this? Should I have done that? And no, damn it, we're going to stick with this thing. We're going to find our groove, and this thing is going to start to work for us. And so this Kanban was in the middle of our office for a very intentional reason, is because I wanted it to be visible. I wanted all of our employees to see it on their way to the restroom. And so at some point, you couldn't ignore the thing. It just, and it started to snowball. So it went from 5 people to 10 people. And at its largest point, I think we had like 40 people standing around this huddle every day from 2 to 2:30. And that type of ritualistic type behavior, sticking to a cadence, was important. And whether or not someone was contributing to the actual huddle, right? Iterative improvements to an electrical improvement or a mechanical improvement, whatever the case may be. Just that, an employee observing the conversation and the behavior and what we're trying to accomplish, just it increased the momentum of adoption within the organization. Now, I need to tell you that KLH, maybe 10 years ago, suffered from I think a very common disease. It's called shiny object syndrome, right? So it's, oh, that's a great idea. We're going to go do this. And we put 2 weeks of effort into it. And the employees are skeptical, like, are we really doing this thing? And lo and behold, we all get busy and it kind of dies and falls to the wayside. And so we had to prove to our employees that this technical strategy, these 3 major initiatives, were here to stay. So fighting through that, hosting like town hall meetings, just to, Q&A, hit me with your questions, that type of behavior of just thinking outside the box. I hate that expression, by the way, but trying new things on how do we increase adoption along the way. And so that was a wonderful process. And it was all centered around innovating routine things, right? It started with saving clicks. It eventually got to much larger, opportunities to automate entire workflows, not necessarily just one singular task. And so that software team continued to grow. And during that time, I need to tell you that there were still skeptical employees. And as much as I, fought to win over their skepticism, they would look at hiring an additional software engineer, which, by the way, is entirely overhead to our business. It's not a billable position. Employees would think, well, there goes my bonus. Why are we spending these dollars on these types of things? And it's all part of that journey to build something substantial. The returns don't come overnight. I just couldn't believe at how many people thought that we do one thing and it's going to pay dividends a week from now. No, it takes years to get to a point of significance. And so that said, there were a lot of people that left the company, and that was hard for me to endure. Turnover in any capacity is shitty, right? It sucks to deal with emotionally, and then the damage control that follows. But I look back on it thinking, that was absolutely necessary turnover to get us where we are today. So what does innovation mean to KLH in a very long-winded way? I would say it's everything. It's relevance. The reason why we went on this journey to begin with, why did we have that huddle? It's about relevancy. It's about survival. I said we're on the path to obsolescence because we were not providing value to our customers. And if as long as you're not doing that and you're not even looking out 30 years from now, how do I give my career a shot to live out in this industry? It's just not going to happen. So thinking in those terms is what set us on that path.
Yeah. 2 things I love from and we're not even at the end of the story, which is what I love, but is we actually have a sign in the front of our office or a quote that says, it's hard to be great at anything that you don't think about in the shower. Y Combinator guy. So you're not alone in that. It's a very startup way of thinking. But 2, I think what I love in like watching your emotion telling this story is that innovation, change, turning a literal ship in a different direction, it can be awkward and hard and weird. And it's a lot easier to just look at that bottom line and say, are we doing that 3% year over year growth? I don't want to think about 10 years down the road. And you guys went and did that. And that, I think, is what so many companies just won't push through. And so they won't be around. That is the bottom line. And I'm going to steal your phrase that you said in our prep call, which is that you guys essentially burned the business down and rebuilt it. Like that's awkward. That's hard. But, and where I would love for you to kind of go next, it opened up this whole new opportunity, new verticals, a new direction of where you guys headed next, it sounds like.
I'm glad that you bring that up. It not only jogs my memory in the moment here, it was much easier on the prep call, by the way. but nonetheless, I'm going to hit on for just a second again, sort of this whole change had to start top down, and that started with me as the leader of the organization, thinking about how can I expect the employees to change their behavior if I'm not willing to do that myself? And so it was thinking in the shower, what are the new strategies I'm going to implement to try to increase adoption? And one of those things, is turning the organization into an offensive-minded company. Too often we were playing defense, and there's a popular business type of axiom that is, or a question. It's, is your business playing offense or defense? Because too frequently we're playing defense, and we had to change the perspective to be playing offense. And so at the end of each of our Kanban huddles, again, here's one of those silly moments where I'm like, I don't care what anyone, guys, put your hands in the middle, and we're going to count down offense on 3. And I just explained that little story, and people are like, are we really doing this? Like, this is, you don't do this in the office. And we did it. And it was silly at first, but it became over time something that has significant meaning in our business today.
And that's culture. Like you built a 2 to 2:30 p.m. culture, like stake in the ground that I imagine has continued from there.
It's all about culture. The old Peter Drucker comment about, culture eating strategy for lunch is true. You can have the world's best strategy. It don't mean shit if you don't have the culture to execute it. I mean, flat out. So that is where my energy and my effort was focused mostly. Believe me, I'm not the smartest guy in the company, right? In terms of engineering. That is where we had a wonderful team of engineers that filled in those gaps. And it's one of those, the sum of the parts is greater than it just goes to show you that the team is critical. So I mentioned, in the early days, it started with, I'll summarize it this way. We had to fix our own shit first within the walls. And that's where, saving clicks. But as we identified opportunities now to bring value outside the walls of KLH, because quite frankly, just because we were doing our work more efficiently, our customers didn't. They're like, good for you. I'm glad to hear that. But how is that bringing value to me? And we needed to focus on those things. And something really wonderful happens when you commit your organization or even yourself. I mean, I think these things apply to your personal lives. When you commit yourself to change for the right reasons, all these other residual opportunities start to present themselves. And it's not like back, at the beginning of this, we said, you know what, in 5 years from now, we want to have this startup entity that's doing X, Y, and Z. No. That opportunity reveals itself at some time, 4 years down the road. And we started to look broader. And one of the things that we determined is that construction is a very joyless experience for owners.
Amen.
Whether or not you're a business owner, whether you did a renovation within your own personal home, you have all this excitement, right? It's an exciting time in your life or in the business's history, right? We're expanding our plant for whatever reason, for growth. You go into this whole construction process with great excitement only to get your soul crushed through it all, because you start to understand all the waste that exists in the industry, in the whole process. And we committed ourselves to, we need to bring joy to construction. That is our vision, mission and vision. And that opened up the door to all these other opportunities to provide value to the owner client, as well as the true consumer of our work is in fact the contractor, right? Within the value stream, our contracts are generally held with architects, not all the time, but traditionally speaking. And yet we're serving the needs of an architect when the true consumer, like a great construction, by the way, right across the street, they are the true consumer of our services. And we discovered that they had a very poor opinion of engineers like KLH, not just KLH, the whole engineering community. And so about 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to go on the road and speak to peer groups, contractor peer group. I'm talking about electrical, mechanical, general contractor peer groups all around the country, with one real, objective was to understand how they feel about engineers. And I entered that environment with an enormous amount of humility, because I had to acknowledge first that I know we suck, right? I know that. So please tell me, like, how do you feel about it? And what can we change? And that informed subsequent strategies on how to provide more value. And they said a few things. The first is that they see engineers as a necessary evil, right? We are registered, we have the stamp, we're stamping the drawings, and for that reason, right, that's the only, like, we're serving the needs of a permit. Is that really the value that we're providing? In the event that gets automated by some tech, right, we're out on the street, we're out of business. The second thing is, like, the product that we're producing is incomplete. It's not coordinated with the other trades, and it's not constructible. Like, we are not thinking about, constructability. Can this thing actually be installed in the field? Will this piece of equipment in a renovation actually fit through the door? Like, we're just not giving those types of thoughts into our process. And the last piece is that they have such little confidence in what we're providing them that they are building, vertically integrating design services in-house. They are building their own teams of engineers, which would suggest that they don't want to deal with this anymore. They're sick of it. And so we brought this information back to the office, and it just added fuel to the fire, right? Which informed what we needed to do subsequent to that. And we landed on a few things. The first was, I mentioned data as a core tenet of the strategy. We view data as its own discipline. Electrical engineering is a discipline. Architecture is a discipline. Data is also a discipline. And owner clients have all these aspirations to leverage data within a BIM model in order to use it for a host of different reasons: depreciating assets, facilities. When are they maintaining certain assets, certain pieces of equipment? When do they need to think about replacement? Those types of that type of thought is totally absent in construction. So we view data as a discipline, and I mentioned how owner clients, they want to leverage data also in a meaningful way. But they don't know how to do that when it comes to construction. And oftentimes owners will put together what is called a BIM execution plan. And it outlines all of the requirements of not just the design team, but the contractors as well. And when in that RFP pursuit, what typically happens is everyone checks about, oh yeah, we do BIM. No problem. And then when the project gets awarded, all they're doing is drafting, no intelligence whatsoever within their product. And the owner is left with the same old shit, to pardon my language. And so we found an opportunity to provide more value to not just the owners, but also other parts of the value stream. That's what I mean, looking outside our walls. How do we provide more value? And data as a discipline, we came up with this startup called LevCon Analytics, and it's meant to be a consulting engagement, but there's also a product that we've created that helps everyone on the design team interface with a BIM model more efficiently, because their proficiency within the 3D BIM model is lacking. So LevCon is an engagement that provides more value to the owner, and at the completion of a project, the owner now has the opportunity to leverage the data that is embedded with within a BIM model in a more meaningful way. So that's LevCon. We call these our 5 verticals, by the way. The first vertical, and there's a reason why it's number 1, is KLH Engineers, the consulting engineering company.
The OG.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is the OG, and it is all about number 1. We got to feed number 1. And I always had culturally, I always said, guys, we're building this, we're building a new airplane on the airplane we're currently flying. And that sort of speaks to, we got 2 jobs to do, right? We're building LevCon at the same time we're serving our engineering projects.
Well, and just to back up before you keep going, what I find to put some innovation terms on this, and what I love is that you took a moment, went out and did customer discovery, which no one bothers to do anymore, found all of the pain points, and then came back and said, all right, here are the 5 products. Essentially, you used to have one. Sounds like it was crap. You said that, not my words, in case any employees get mad. And then you said, here are the 5.
As it existed, it was crap.
And so then you essentially created these 5 product lines and competencies, which are, it sounds like LevCon, KLH, and then these 3 others. Yeah.
So the third one here is software solutions. The opportunity to become a software consultant. I mentioned part of the original charter was to introduce software engineering into our workflows to automate the routine, build capacity for engineers to focus on the more enjoyable tasks, the more consulting tasks of the role. But another wonderful opportunity presented itself that we were now seen as sort of a thought leader and an expert in this space. I mean, there are all sorts of software companies out there, startups, tech startups that are purporting to solve all the pains within construction. And by the way, construction is one of the last major industries to be disrupted by tech. There's a whole host of reasons why that is that I'm not going to go into, but you have all of these tech startups just chomping at the bit to disrupt construction. But there's a lot of skepticism amongst the end users there, because they don't understand all the 1,000 little decision points that exist within a project. And so we saw the opportunity as we're practitioners, we understand the pains, we're in the trench, we get all that, and look what it's done for our business. And so we started to be highly sought after from the market in terms of, hey, we've heard the KLH story. How do we get on this journey? Please help us. And it turned into, we didn't charge for these things. It's we'll come help you. We'll share our story. Any way we can be a mentor in that regard.
Which goes back to what I love, what you were talking about. Not all of these opportunities presented themselves 6 years ago. Some of them came up as you guys walked down this journey. Namely, you started focusing on data, and then all of a sudden you're consultants. You couldn't have predicted that 6 years ago.
We couldn't have predicted any of that. And I meant bring joy to construction. That's, influencing and changing a $1.6 trillion industry. Yes, we, a small company in Northern Kentucky, are capable of doing that, and we are doing that. And it's not like we're trying to hold any of these things, close to the vest, or we're trying to hold these as secrets. We want to build everyone else up, change the industry in that regard. If you hide, if you're selfish in that regard, you just don't experience the type of change that you desire. And so, they were asking, can we hire you for a software consulting engagement? And with those small little opportunities, that transformed into something much, much bigger. And now the major software players in construction are reaching out to KLH engineers as a means to partner, as a means to acquire the IP that we've created. There's a number of ways that these arrangements take place, which has been an entirely new set of learnings for us. Is how is software priced? How is software deployed? What is the change management strategies in organizations once software is in fact deployed within a business? So that's number 3, is software solutions, which is not yet an entity, but it will become an entity here by the end of the year, if I have anything to say about it. The 4th is really interesting. It's called domain, not domain, as many people get it wrong. It's domain, DEMAIN. And domain stands for design, DE, manufacturing, MA, and installation, IN. And the way that came about, I mentioned that, we went out and we talked to contractors, how they felt about us. And so, once we realized, hey, they are the true consumer of our products, they're the ones who are going to put us out of business. We wanted to reach out. How do we partner? How do we provide more value? And so, not everyone took us seriously. They agreed with what we were saying, but only a few out of that audience reached back out and said, you know what, we're tired of the same stuff too. Like, we want to institute some change here too. And so we came together, and it was a consortium at the beginning, but we just started talking about what can we do to change the norms within construction. And so you have an engineer on the design side, and construction, the installers on the construction side, and the build side. But what's unique about these players is they also have manufacturing components to their businesses. So the consortium consists of KLH as the engineer. You have Rexmore Electric out of Sacramento, California as the electrical contractor, the installer. Their sister company is called Construction Innovations. They're electrical components manufacturer, also out of Sacramento. Then we have Tweet Garrett mechanical contractor out of Green Bay, Wisconsin, who has also built this enormous facility that allows them to manufacture. Now, why is manufacturing important here? Right, manufacturing principles have existed forever. And so construction, again, being one of those laggards to technology trends, is, how do we implement manufacturing principles into the construction process? Said differently, how can we build off-site, right, assemblies, or how do we assemble kits, ship it to a job site, and then, like, literally, I'm not trying to oversimplify this, but it becomes almost like Lego construction.
Like a plug and play, literally.
Plug and play, almost like an IKEA model. I think that's a little overstated and cliched. I hear that a lot. But those that are doing it know it's a very powerful model that saves, it reduces waste, it reduces material waste, and it capitalizes on the opportunities for repeatable tasks. And these types of manufacturing principles make repeatable tasks scalable in a really significant way. And these were companies that were doing it, and they were experiencing success as a result. The missing piece, though, was the connection of design into that process. So how do we productize our designs? Said differently, is how are we identifying within a BIM model, a data-rich model, all of the assembly opportunities that exist on a 4-story hotel, on a new hospital, on a new school, elementary school. It doesn't matter what the application is. There are hundreds of cases and examples of where they are installing the same things over and over and over again. And it's just an enormous amount of labor waste that exists on a job site when they're doing that. And so this presents an opportunity to streamline that and ultimately provide more value to the owner at the end of the day. The other thing, Liz, that is emerging as a result of Domain, which is its own entity and is winning work, a significant amount of work, is the introduction to an emerging trend. It's modular construction. So think of what I just described as offsite assemblies. Now, this could be like, switchgear being assembled, a head wall in a patient room, prefabricated pump racks. But think of it now in terms of an entire space. Now, the most simple example of this would be like a multifamily apartment complex, maybe a dorm on a university campus, something, again, repeatable, or a hotel, right, where the rooms are repeatable. It allows, so modular construction is the same concept and principle, but building the entire space offsite, then shipping it to the job site, and again, literally bolting it on to the building. And so that is an emerging trend that is taking root with more progressive owners. I'm hearing that Kaiser Health is a big proponent of modular construction. It's also taking root in Wisconsin and Chicago with Advocate Aurora Health, but we're on a significant student living project out in California. I mean, it's like 1,000 units. Okay, so just to give you a perspective on scale, it's about $1 billion construction budget, and the whole objective here is to prove that modular construction can cost compete with traditional stick build, and we're doing that in a really significant way. And I share that because we are positioning KLH to be at the front of the line when that trend becomes the expectation in the industry.
That's awesome.
So the last one, number 5, is a pre-seed startup. Again, this whole evolution of KLH is like just promoting thinking and acting like a startup. Like everything is on the line here, right? Behaviorally, that is what instigates that type of change, both organizationally and personally. And so the 5th one here is a pre-seed startup called Configure. And what Configure aims to do, and it's separating from KLH for a whole host of reasons, and that is important. But as we're kind of scrumming through that process, that legal process, I can still share that Configure aims to provide more trust and transparency within the industry. Again, it's kind of a waste statement. But there's also a lack of transparency that exists in terms of, major building products. I'm not talking about commodities. I'm talking about engineered to order products like I mentioned chiller plants earlier, boilers, generators, switchgear, electrical distribution system. That is
more
what I'm
niche
talking
specific
about.
products.
Yeah, lighting products. It doesn't have to be these huge, hefty products, but it's also like, lighting. It can be plumbing fixtures. It can be a whole host of different things. Configure, frankly, is going to become a marketplace for construction, where owners, where contractors, where vendors, where distributors, they can all collaborate and match products. They can represent their products, their equipment, their brand on the platform in a meaningful way that allows users or specifiers like engineers and architects to find these products. Because frankly, the way that market intelligence is done by manufacturers in construction is to bring a box of donuts to our office and say, "Hey, what are you working on?" And that just isn't a real effective way to capture market intelligence. Whereas Configure provides that data to where are they performing well? Where are they not? What markets are they not performing well? What products are moving more frequently than others? So there's all sorts of value that gets introduced as a result of this. But we are, like I said, pre-seed. We're getting ready to begin our seed round. We have a lead investor all kind of on tap and ready to go. We're excited about that and what it means to the organization. But Liz, the thing that I loved about you inviting me on this podcast to begin with is you mentioned how are companies and organizations promoting entrepreneurship type thinking within their businesses, and the 5 verticals that I just laid out. But more importantly, LevCon and Configure have opened our eyes now to this opportunity to create, because frankly, KLH incubated these startups. And if we can do it there, why not continue that pattern, outside of that? So what Bob Heil, the current CEO of KLH, he and I are discussing right now, culturally and organizationally, is how do we structure, an incubator type of environment within KLH's walls. And to be fair, we've already been acting like it and doing it for the last several years. So it's not something necessarily new, but putting some structure,
some scaffolding around it.
Putting more scaffolding around it and building it up to be more official. And that way we are promoting not only with our current employees that, hey, if you've got a great idea, but from a talent acquisition perspective, I think this could be an enormous attractant for talent out there to come work for KLH, knowing that this type of opportunity exists. Again, at the foundation level, we are an engineering company. We still need to be conducting that work. However, if you have a great idea, something that makes sense, whether it's adjacent to construction, whether it's in construction, we're going to listen to it, and it converts our shareholders into a, none of us we're not angel investors here, but it positions us to kind of act like it. And I think that's pretty damn cool.
Absolutely.
And so if we're able to listen to a great idea and say, you know what, excuse me, we are willing to invest in this idea and invest in you as the founder, that's pretty special. Yeah. And it also, what is the alternative? The alternative is, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to put everything on the line, which I think is great. Most founders do that, but there's a lot of risk that exists with that. Whereas we're willing to support it financially, but also all the infrastructure from a IT perspective and a resource perspective exists within the walls. So that type of those types of resources are available to those prospective intrapreneurs, as we like to say it. But quite frankly, I'm excited about what this means because I just laid out the 5. What's number 6? What's number 7? What's number 8? Yeah. And the thing that I love the most is this is not good grammar, but we ain't going to stop innovating, right? This is just who we are now. We are not going to get complacent just because we're now enjoying significant success on the shoulders of the engineering business, and all the other verticals that are starting to produce revenue in a meaningful way. It's, we're just not going to stop. We're going to continue this trend, and it's fun, it reminds me, and you're going to love this, I think. Back when, we were done with that offsite in 2016, I was terrified of okay, how do we get this thing off the ground? And I asked Joe Kors, again, the former president CEO, how do we know we're on the right path? And he goes, Jim, I'll tell you, it's when it starts getting fun. And that has stuck with me through this all because we're having a ball over at KLH, and I'm damn proud.
Just to bring this full circle, I love that you guys started as Blockbuster, basically, and Netflix was on the way. And now you guys are basically a mini startup incubator and are learning what that looks like and how to make it from there. So that's the story. I can't add anything more to it. I'm so excited to see where you guys go. Bringing joy to construction. Love that. You said engineers aren't creative. You are creative, because that's one of the best taglines I've heard in a while. And yeah, I love the story of you guys taking a really honest look at where you are and then doing true innovation, which is awkward and clunky, but ends up with getting to look your employees in the face and saying, if you have an idea, we can bring it to life. So, I think it's lunchtime from what I understand, if I hear my stomach correctly. But Jim, that's the story that we just want to shout from the rooftops. We love to hear it. We're excited to see where you guys go. Quick, as we wrap up, how can people find you guys, support you guys, get in touch with KLH?
You can find us on our website, klhengrs.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. And not to mention, we're everywhere. We're speaking, if there's a conference worth attending, we're going to be speaking at it. Another cultural change over the last 6 years. We're finding those opportunities to spread thought leadership and to provoke, not prescribe, changes in behavior and necessary change within the industry. Because again, we can't do this alone. If we're all going to enjoy the change that needs to occur within the industry, it needs to be everyone moving in that direction. Liz, I appreciate the opportunity to come on the podcast. I thank you. I think Venture Labs and Awesome Inc. Wonderful stuff you're doing, and I'm flattered to just the privilege to be on your show.
Thanks for letting us tell your story, and thanks for coming all the way down. We're excited for people to hear it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you know someone who should be on our show, even if it's you, reach out to us at innovationincubated.com. And while you're on our website, sign up for our newsletter. Lastly, thanks to our sponsor, Apex Software. The right software partner can change everything. So reach out today at apexsoftware.com. Until next time, go team.